I'm pretty sure now that we're looking at 2027 as the year. There will be a coordinated release of information, a coordinated introduction of ETs.
Can I give him a big hug?
I hope so.
That's a moment.
Hybrids have actually been among us all this time. The original hominid that was evolved on our planet was already altered genetically by an extraterrestrial race. All humans are hybridized. They know what the structure of existence is. We're sort of in a 3-decade reset of humanity. It's not that you're dealing with artificial intelligence. You might be dealing with an artificial construct through which actual intelligence or consciousness can express itself. Much of what's going on in the AI field may actually be being assisted by extraterrestrials. Recently, he's done something very unusual, and to me is an indication of things accelerating.
Welcome, everybody, to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. We have our good friend Darryl Anka back with us today. Thank you so much for coming with us again.
Welcome.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I think we're at like 10 times now for having Darryl on. This has been amazing. And for those of you who don't know, the questions today are primarily coming from Bashar's Facebook community. So thank you to the Bashar Facebook community.
Yes. So I'm going to lead off with just a little question. What is something fundamental about human existence that we do not yet fully understand? Just a little one.
Let's see, what do we understand?
Hmm.
Fundamental about human existence. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people, even people that quote unquote believe in things like the soul still sort of think of it in the sense of, well, we are physical beings that have a soul. And the real or more accurate way to look at it is we are a soul. That's what we are by nature. And that we create this physical experience within the soul's consciousness. So I think people don't quite have the fundamental feeling of themselves as a soul first. They think of themselves as a physical being that has a soul, which sort of is one step removed from what we actually are. So I think that would be a fundamental understanding that would probably change a lot of how people go about their daily lives to realize that they truly are a soul. That's their natural state as a non-physical form of consciousness made out of energy.
Awesome. You had recently mentioned in our last interview that governments are going to be leading open contact. Will the United States be one of those governments or not? And
Yes. Yes. I do believe my understanding so far anyway is that there will be a coordinated release of information, a coordinated introduction of ETs when open contact occurs, ideally within a couple of years. So yeah, I think different government agencies around the world will be coordinating to figure out what the timing for that is precisely, but that it will probably be done something along the line of an announcement or a press conference or something along that line.
so for that, it seems like you're saying there will probably be like a specific date that is agreed upon, or is it more based upon our vibrational alignment?
Well, both,
Both.
and several other factors as well, including when the ETs believe that it's appropriate. But like I said, I'm pretty sure now that we're looking at 2027 as the year. I don't know what the date itself would be that would be settled on, but all indications so far seem to indicate that it'll be in 2027.
Nice. Well, let us know if you get that date.
You better come here and tell us first.
Uh, I will.
It had also been mentioned that aliens keep a close watch on the world's nuclear arsenal and wouldn't allow an Earth-ending nuclear attack.
Right.
Is there Only intercession if a war becomes where people are using nuclear weapons?
There's an intervention if it is something that is so devastating it wouldn't remain on Earth. In other words, it would penetrate into other dimensions, cause problems outside of our backyard. Other than that, I believe they generally have a non-interference directive. But at this particular time, I think that they may be stepping up a little bit their ability to prevent a large scale disaster from happening. It's very important for whatever their reasons are at this point that humanity and the Earth continue. So there is something in the ET agenda that makes this particular timing a little bit more capable of the ETs stepping in. And again, I think that may have something to do with the idea of disclosure coming up and open contact coming up, in that it's time that they recognize there are things going on the planet that do now require them to step in somewhat to provide the guidance necessary to make sure that humanity and its evolutionary path at this point does continue into the future. So, yes, they may still, obviously, they're, not stopping anything that's going on right now directly in terms of wars or conflicts that exist on our planet. And I don't know to what degree they will allow, anything to happen that's even more devastating. I've talked about the idea that even a small, quote unquote, that's relative, even a tactical nuke in one area may not be enough. I don't know. Um, but we'll have to sort of see. But they won't allow a full-scale nuclear war, and I think they've clearly demonstrated that when we have many reports of UFOs over missile silo bases, scrambling the launch codes and things like that as a direct and I think very clear message that will not be allowed to launch a full-scale nuclear war. So that I think has been off the table for quite some time now, couple of decades at least. So, yeah, because again, the release of that much energy would actually tear into other dimensions, and things like that. And that would be going outside our backyard where, we'd be affecting other consciousnesses, other realities that really have nothing to do with us.
Nice. What form will open contact originally happen in? Will it be like the form of a ship? Will it be physical?
I think first what we're going to get is more and more and more sightings and more clear sightings and more recordings of sightings, allowing us to really get used to the fact that the ships are here, that they're here. So I think we'll see an increase in that over the next year or so, until we just suddenly can't really deny that they do exist. There's just so much evidence, so much clear images that have been recorded and photographed and stuff like that. And that will probably lead up to um, the introduction and revelation that beings like hybrids have actually been among us all this time, helping certain scientists, helping working with certain government officials to do certain things that have been already been going on for a couple of decades or several decades in terms of technology and things like that are coming up. So I think the first step would be the revelation of those that have been among us.
Hmm.
And, then the next step would be the introduction of those that have been helping, maybe more remotely. So we're looking at the introduction of hybrids. We're looking at the introduction of Pleiadians. And then, after that, an introduction, whether fast or slow, of other species as well.
Wow.
Can you talk about the Rh negative blood type? And also, if there's been hybrids here, what's some of the evidence that would make a hybrid different in terms of what could be analyzed medically or on a physical level?
I really can't answer that deeply. I know Bashar does not at this point talk about the Rh factor in blood, so I have no real information to share with you that he's shared with us. Um, the hybrids that are among us obviously are undetectable, so they obviously look like us enough that we can't tell what they are. In terms of a medical way of telling, well, yeah, there may be differences in their DNA that we could point to and say, well, look, that's obviously not a typical human. But again, I think that when the introduction is made, there will be other ways in which we'll know because the hybrids themselves have abilities and ways of demonstrating what they are that they're simply not doing right now so that they can remain undercover, so to speak, while they're helping us. So I think it's going to have a lot to do with what they're willing to reveal to us and what will be obvious when they are introduced. And then, sure, if somebody wants to go, well, let's examine their DNA and see what the real differences are, then, that may happen because I think one of the things that they're helping us with and going to be introducing, and one of the things that's going to come up within probably the next 5 to 10 years in terms of medical science is the whole concept of what's going on with genetic engineering, CRISPR technology. So I think, their knowledge of genetic engineering and maybe even the donation of their genetic material may actually, in fact, allow us to understand genetics sufficiently to start addressing all sorts of medical conditions, diseases, and so on and so forth, and actually find genetic cures for them. So the idea of learning what their genetics is and how different it may be from ours may weave into the idea of the medical breakthroughs that we'll be experiencing within the next 5 to 10 years that have to do with CRISPR technology, which is gene editing technology.
Has Bashar mentioned anything on Neuralink and whether he thinks Neuralink is a positive advancement?
He hasn't discussed that at all. I don't know that anyone's ever asked him that question, so I'm not really sure what he would say about that other than, anything, any technology can be used positively or negatively. So it's really about, how it's done, who's directing the use of it for what purpose and why and all that kind of stuff. So that's really the most I can say about something along that line. Although, in general, it can certainly be a technological precursor or assistance to us becoming a little bit more telepathic, if used that way. But I really don't have much information from him on that because I don't think anyone's really talked to him about that.
Has anyone ever asked him about Elon Musk in general? I know it's a little more semi-political, but
Uh, Not that I'm aware of.
okay. Nice.
Follow up to what we were just talking about. If you're a hybrid, do you know it?
I was going to
Or
ask that too.
could there be people that don't know that they're
No,
a
no, no. The hybrids that have been placed here know
I
exactly who.
know.
This is not someone that's like, a human that suddenly wakes up to the fact that, oh, I'm a hybrid, because all humans are hybridized. But I'm talking specifically about the hybrids that have been planted here.
Mm.
They know exactly who they are. And a lot of the hybrid children have already been introduced into our society and they know who they are. But a lot of the hybrid children have been introduced through orphanages and been adopted into families. So, then there's a reason why there's no background on them because children that are dropped off at orphanages are like, well, okay, we'll just put this child in the orphanage and hopefully a family will come and adopt this child. So a lot of hybrid children have been adopted into families without the families knowing that they're hybrid children, but the hybrid children know exactly who they are, and that'll be probably part of the revelation.
So if you're thinking about adopting, greetings.
You're going to encourage adoption in the audience.
I know. It's actually really exciting. That's one of the coolest answers ever. So Could AI eventually become a vessel for non-human or dimensional consciousness to incarnate through?
Yes, because again, Bashar has basically said it's any device that we create that is sophisticated enough, like the brain, to allow for consciousness to express itself, consciousness will express itself through it. So it's not that you're dealing with artificial intelligence, you might be dealing with an artificial construct through which actual intelligence or consciousness can express itself in the same way that consciousness is expressing itself through our brains, because consciousness exists first before the physical manifestation of the brain. The brain is simply a receiver. So if we can create something as complex and sophisticated enough, like the brain, consciousness will be capable of expressing itself through it.
Nice.
Hmm.
Our mission here at the Heart Coherence Collaborative is to get people in touch with the healing power of the heart.
And we really need your help. Right now, only 1% of viewers subscribe. We are aiming to take that number to 6%.
The reason why we want to do that is the more people that subscribe, the more people in the world can learn the magical practice of heart coherence.
So please help us out. If you ever listened, if you love this message, please just take a moment to subscribe.
Thank you so much. We love you.
We love you. Bashar speaks about seventh hybrid race as if it didn't happen yet, which is different than any other parallel reality. Is it because it exists as a potential, but not all potential has been experienced yet?
No, that's a slight misunderstanding. Everything exists now, but he's speaking from a linear perspective as a part of our evolutionary path. So everything exists, but when you're talking about it from a space-time linear perspective, for us, it doesn't exist yet. It's in what we call the future. So he's just talking about it as a linear expression of our evolutionary path. After humans become the sixth hybrid race, then blending all the races to become the seventh. But of course, in the ultimate view of everything, it all exists.
Could you explain your version of ascended masters and if they're real?
Ascended masters, in my understanding, are simply souls that have had so much incarnational experience from a linear perspective, hundreds or thousands of lives incarnationally, that they simply are a soul now that has made a choice to use all the benefit of all that knowledge and all those lessons to come and help upgrade humanity by sharing their experience and their knowledge with us. So it's sort of similar to the idea of an old soul that is willing to be of service to humanity by sharing their knowledge. And the idea, again, of an old soul is not that souls themselves are actually older or younger. The concept of a young soul or an old soul only refers to how many incarnational experiences they've had in a certain reality. So all souls are eternal, infinite, and all the same age. But one soul may have had 10,000 lives on Earth. Another soul may only be starting out and only have had like 5 lives on Earth. So the 5 lives would consider that to be a young soul because of their lack of experience in the Earth incarnations. And the one that's had 10,000 incarnations on Earth would be considered an old soul because they have amassed so much more experience and information in this particular realm. So obviously there can be young souls and old souls in that context in a variety of civilizations. If someone's had 1,000 lives incarnationally in the Pleiadian systems, they would be an old soul as far as Pleiadians are concerned. So it's just a matter of how much experience you have in a particular realm as that determines whether you are a quote unquote young or old soul. It has nothing to do with the actual age of a soul because souls are ageless, they're timeless, they're eternal and infinite.
That's great.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you talk about why we would give ourselves experiences of darkness in lives?
Well, again, sometimes it's easier to understand what is the light when you can experience the dark. A lot of times we need that contrast because of the way we incarnate on Earth And sometimes having a negative or dark experience can make it much more clear to us what it is we prefer in the opposite direction. It's the old saying of you can more easily see a candlelight when it's surrounded by darkness because it's such a tiny little flame. So sometimes we use the darkness to help illuminate the light a little bit more clearly so we know what direction we actually prefer to go in. So, it's just the learning that technique of how to use the negative in a positive way. Another example would be the fact that we do have these incarnational experiences, because you could say we have imposed upon our less limited consciousness a kind of negative focus, a focus of limiting ourselves in order to have these physical experiences, but for a positive reason, to learn something, to grow, to experience things we can't necessarily experience in a timeless state in non-physical reality, to discover something new by creating a forgetfulness that allows us to remember who we are from a new perspective. So that's using what is a negative mechanism of limitation for a positive reason of expanding our understanding of who we are and allowing creation to expand in that way as well.
Great. Are current AI models already being influenced by interdimensional or ET consciousness?
Yes.
Could
Simple answer. Yes.
you... Nice.
And in fact, much of what's going on in the AI field may actually be being assisted by extraterrestrials without people knowing that. Again, hybrids are among us. They are ensconced in many of these technological fields. And some of the things that we may be experiencing as advances in any particular scientific discipline, not saying everything is, but some of them may be coming from extraterrestrials in terms of hybrids who are among us, who go, let's try this. How about we go in this direction? Or, here's a technological breakthrough or something along that line. So yeah, the whole field of AI may in fact be being assisted by extraterrestrial beings.
You had said that, there'll be this stream of people starting to spot UFOs. And a lot of people explain UFOs by saying governments have secret knowledge that they haven't shared and they're way more advanced. Are you aware of what the line is? What would truly be past our abilities and be some evidence that it was actually extraterrestrial?
I'm not sure how you could tell here just by looking at a craft, unless the craft is giving off evidence of multidimensionality. That's a line I don't think we've been able to cross. I know that governments have been able to reverse engineer UFO technology to a certain point, but I'll just put it this way. I think our reversed engineered versions are still very much more nuts and bolts, whereas the more advanced ET ships are literally almost considered living beings and have interdimensional properties. So the things you see certain UFOs doing, where you can tell that they're slipping in and out of dimensions, changing shape, changing size, which is an effect that might be an indication they're shifting dimensional realities, things like that, I think are more an indication of an advanced ET ship as opposed to a reversed engineered craft from our governments that would simply be a device that's flying around, maybe silently or, exhibiting some unusual maneuvers, but still mostly just flying around, as opposed to exhibiting any other traits.
One thing that I always find really fascinating is when you speak about, governments working with ETs, you say it with a this is happening. And I'm curious if that comes from Bashar, and you might not be able to answer this, or do you know some people that know some stuff?
Both. Um, so and it's not, when I say that, it's not governments in the large scheme of things. There are a few select government individuals, there are a few select scientific individuals that the ETs are working with. It's not like the entire government knows. In fact, probably very few people in the government know that this is actually going on. So I'm talking about a slice of our society, government officials, certain scientists, so on and so forth, some military individuals. It's a slice of our society, but not a large scale thing at this point. But again, in a couple of years, if open contact does occur, when we think it will, then yeah, it'll expand and more people can take advantage of it, including people in the public domain.
Many talk about demons or fallen angels. Are these real? Are they just negative parts of people? What are they really?
Yeah. Yes and no. Let me put it this way. Imagine the collective consciousness of humanity as an energy field. We experience the idea of negativity here, of fear-based beliefs, so on and so forth. When the fear-based beliefs are strong enough, on an archetypal level, collectively, humanity can manifest a reflection of that negative, fear-based belief system and manifest a reflection of that, almost like we're forming something out of clay to reflect what we're giving off. I don't think the concept of demons exists as beings in their own right. I think demons are something that we manifest out of that consciousness clay to reflect a deep-seated collective fear-based belief system so that we have the ability to experience what that can do and how we can manifest that so that we can understand how to change that. I mean, because when you look at things like, as has been compiled over the ages, a compendium of all of the so-called powers or things that demons are supposed to be in charge of, you'll notice in that list, like this is the demon of lies, this is the demon of this is the demon of that. They're all reflections of different things that humans experience in their fear-based beliefs. It's not like they have powers beyond that. So I think that demons are not something that exist in their own right as a separate form of consciousness. I think that we manifest them as reflections out of the collective consciousness clay, so to speak, to reflect something that we are needing to face within ourselves, which I think instinctively we understand because we always say the phrase, oh, we're fighting our inner demons, right? And I think that's very telling. I think that's an actual accurate representation that we're manifesting this as a reflection of our own inner fear-based negativity. So, no, I don't think they exist on their own without us.
So I have a lot of friends that are playing around with ChatGPT like pretty heavily, and what they're doing is they're kind of tuning it into the ChatGPT version now believes it's their higher self. And so when they speak to ChatGPT, they're asking it to channel entities, they're asking it questions as if it's their higher self. My question to you is, can AI actually be used to access information that's beyond the realm? Can it tune itself to doing that?
I'm not sure AI itself is actually there yet, but it's like training wheels. It's good practice. And think of it at the moment like a deck of tarot cards. It's a trigger, it's a permission slip to allow us to access our higher selves. And so the answers we're getting when people ask ChatGPT to do that are kind of like using a deck of tarot cards or a crystal ball or tea leaves or what have you. And we get the answers that we synchronistically sort of need to hear. I don't know that it's actually because the AI itself is sentient yet, or if it's simply being used like another divination system device that allows us to trigger our own ability to tap into getting information that we need. I think it's still at that level, but nevertheless, a valuable training mechanism like any divination system that will allow us to stretch our understanding of what we believe it's possible to access.
Gotcha.
What is humanity about to discover that will transform our collective consciousness?
I think we've answered that to some degree. I believe obviously open contact is going to make a huge
Mm.
difference in humanity's point of view of its place in the universe. And that's going to open up a lot of changes going forward, between now and I think roughly, the year 2050. We talked about the idea, and many other people and psychic mediums are talking about the idea that we're sort of in a 3-decade reset of humanity. And one of the major factors contributing to that resetting is the openness of contact with extraterrestrial beings. Because when we absolutely know for a fact that we're not alone and we're able to actually interact with beings that can be literally thousands, if not millions of years ahead of us in evolution, that's going to open a lot of possibilities and a lot of doorways that we may not even have considered as possible. So I do believe that's one of the major events that will cause a shift in humanity's consciousness to make more things seem possible than appear to be possible now.
Bashar has mentioned that the Earth is really important in our galaxy as a planet. Why is that?
Well, I mean, it is a very interesting school of learning for souls. I don't know that there are many planets like Earth in terms of the degree of complexity and depth of physical experience, the degree of experiencing positive and negative realities, and so on and so forth. So it's a very unique school that a lot of souls take advantage of to accelerate their growth because of the degree of the experience, the depth of the experience of having to transform darkness into light, negative into positive, limitation into freedom. So it's like saying, well, how many really advanced universities are there on the planet? Not a lot, really, when you look at it. There's a lot of schools, but how many really advanced universities are there? We usually have in our minds maybe about a handful.
Mm.
So, I think Earth is kind of like that for as far as the other ETs are concerned. It's like this is a crucible that can really create, masters. If they get it, if they can achieve this, if they can learn this, it's a really strong place to learn how to expand and accelerate and grow as a soul.
Wow.
I love that perspective. It can be really tough, but a good
Yeah,
school is really tough.
exactly. You learn a lot.
Yeah.
You learn a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So apologies if this is morbid, but will someone else be channeling Bashar after you're gone?
No,
And has that person? No.
no, no. And think about it this way too. What purpose would there be for doing that if we have open contact?
Mm.
If they're here and we can talk to them face to face, why would anyone need to channel them?
Mm.
Right? So you may still find that there are, some channelings that happen for different reasons in different ways as processes that help us increase our telepathic abilities and stuff like that. But in terms of delivering information, the ETs are willing in open contact to share the information that we need to advance us. So I think that the idea of channeling beings would be for a completely different reason than what's being delivered right now. I think it would be for a purpose like trying to get humans to understand how to be more telepathic by having that experience. Because that's what's going on with Bashar is it's a telepathic contact. That's what I've been trained to do is specifically have a telepathic contact with him. So there really wouldn't be any reason for him to deliver a lot of continuing information if he or others like him are already physically here going, here's the answer to your question.
Right.
Hmm. That's amazing. So,
Mm.
to that question, will there be a time when you actually meet physical Bashar?
So I've been told, yes. Um, and other hybrids and so on and so forth, just like everyone will meet, in open contact.
That's exciting.
Yes, it is.
Gonna give him a big hug? Big hug?
I hope so.
That's a moment.
That's cool.
And you're welcome to come here if you'd like that
Yeah,
moment
we'll
to be
record
broadcast live.
that.
Well, we'll see how open contact unfolds for everyone. I'm sure no one will be left out if they don't want to be left out.
Yes. In that vein, how much are you told about yourself? In other words, major pieces of information like your lifespan or personal romantic information.
Let's put it this way. He drops breadcrumbs for me. He gives me little hints and little clues about things that I need to puzzle together. There have been a series of those things that allow me to go, oh, there's another piece of the puzzle. I'll put that together and that means this, and that takes me here and there. Now, I've always sort of known instinctively that I would have a relatively long lifespan. And I just knew that. And it's probably because of delivering this information, but and other things that I may need to do, because I've been told by other psychics that I'll be involved in certain ways after open contact, and therefore that requires that I'm around for a while. Um, but one anecdotal story I kind of share with people when I talk about the idea of having a long life is a long time ago, I was at a lunch with a bunch of coworkers, and we were at a Chinese restaurant. And of course, you get um, fortune cookies at the end, and everyone opened their fortune cookies, but my fortune cookie didn't have a fortune in it. And I said, well, that's just because I'm gonna live forever or whatever. And they go, no, 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 you have to have a fortune. So they asked the waiter for another fortune cookie, and I opened it up, and the fortune was, you will live a long time. And I said,
Oh, okay.
I've gotten those little synchronous things that tell me I am being given some information, but not a lot of information all at once
Mhm.
about my particular life path. But again, it doesn't really matter. Everyone has already determined their entry points and their exit points within a couple of years. I just know that whenever it is my time to go back home, so to speak, I'll have done what I needed to do.
Mhm. That's great. This is just stemming off a earlier question that Leah asked, just getting a little clarity. Would somebody definitely know if they're a hybrid?
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
Okay.
yes, the hybrids know that they're hybrids when I'm talking about hybrids that have been interjected into our society from out of our society,
Oh, okay.
not
But
people.
everyone is a hybrid in some form.
Everyone is hybrid. Homo sapiens are hybrids
Gotcha.
because the original hominid that was evolved on our planet was already altered genetically by an extraterrestrial race. People refer to them as the Anunnaki, so on and so forth. So with their genetics mixed with the original evolved hominid on Earth, like Homo erectus, what have you,
Mhm.
that created Homo sapiens, as far as we understand it. So humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, is already a hybrid race.
Okay.
And so everyone in that sense is hybrid. Now, people are awakening to the fact that they have extraterrestrial energetic connections.
Mhm.
And so they can start going, oh, well, yes, I feel a Pleiadian connection, a hybrid connection, a Arcturan connection, whatever. That doesn't mean they're the hybrids that have been interjected into our society from space. those hybrids know exactly who they are, why they're here, and what they're doing. They're not humans guessing, am I a hybrid? That's a totally different level of awakening for a human, for Homo sapiens, to recognize the connections they have to spirit, to ETs, to extra dimensionals, and all that. That's part of our awakening as human beings. That's different than an actual hybrid that said, look, I was brought here in a ship.
Yeah.
You know, I remember being, I landed, I got out, I'm here. I'm talking about space travelers. I'm not talking about humans waking up to their inner connection to everything. That's a different thing.
Yeah. The reason I was asking that question is because I was curious, can they take over an existing body? Say somebody like is about to die and cross over. Can they take over that body from that point forward? Have you
Well,
heard
first
anything
of
like
all,
that?
the hybrids are physical. They're
Okay,
not spirits.
gotcha.
The idea of a spirit taking over a body that dies, this is very close to the concept of what people have called a walk-in, but I don't think walk-ins are what people think they are. From my perspective, from Bashar's perspective, what we call a walk-in is more of the same soul expressing itself through that physical person. So that, of course, the identity changes, of course, the personality changes, because you have an upgrade where the soul is now capable of expressing more of what it is through that body. So it seems like the soul has left and another soul has come in, but I don't think that actually happens because bodies are created within the soul. It's not, see, goes back to the idea of people think they have souls and that a soul can leave the body and another soul can enter the body. But when you look at us as an energy sphere, a soul, and that they focus down part of themselves into the center of that sphere to create the physical experience and project the idea of a physical body, you understand that body is in the soul. It's not that the soul is in the body. So it's got to be the same soul expressing more of itself by relaxing that physical personality so it can express more of the larger energy sphere that the soul is, because the body is being created in the center of the soul, not the other way around. The soul never leaves non-physical reality. It's not like physical reality is a place that soul goes to. Physical reality is an experience the soul is creating within its own consciousness.
That makes sense.
That makes so much more
Yeah.
sense to me. We've talked about walk-ins.
I'm a walk-in.
Yeah, and that just means you're expressing more of your original soul through your physical personality. So, of course, your personality will shift to accommodate that, which makes it seem like, oh, you're a different person. That must mean you have a different soul in there. But that's just because you're experiencing more of the same soul, which is very different than what that soul was expressing of itself originally.
Could there also be a walkout? Because there's times I felt very spiritual and then I feel like I got a downgrade or something.
A
So
walk out?
yeah, it was a joke. It was a joke.
Yeah, no. A walkout is someone who's died.
Okay.
Please don't walk out. Okay. Now, this one was fun and we had to look some stuff up, but hopefully this will make sense to you. Can you talk about the creation of the humanoid species in the universe and particularly this galaxy? And if there were Draco wars in Lyra where several planets were destroyed, or is that a myth?
I can't answer that. That's a question for Bashar.
Okay.
I don't know anything about that. I know there were ancient Orion systems that were negative and had warfare and oppression and suppression and things like that. But that's millions of years ago. I don't know that that's still going on. I don't think it is from what Bashar has talked about. I've already talked about the idea of the creation of Homo sapiens on Earth, which is the blending of extraterrestrial genetics with the original hominid species that evolved here. Now, of course, let's take it even a step farther back. When I say the original species that evolved here, that still implies that the genetics that created even the original hominid species and all life on Earth that evolved here naturally still probably came from elsewhere, because not only is there the concept of ETs seeding planets with their genetics, there's the concept of panspermia, which is that genetic material can arrive on asteroids and comets and then take root on the Earth. So, in a sense, our origins are still always extraterrestrial in that sense. But what I'm saying is, whatever it is that arrived here as genetic material that then evolved into whatever grew from that in a natural, organic way as a hominid like Homo erectus or whatever, then was altered again deliberately by extraterrestrials that came and added their genetics to that. Plus, then there's genetic alteration that's happened by the Greys in alien abductions. I mean, our genes have been altered in several different ways for a large part of the human population. So what are we at this point? I mean, I even think one of the reasons why we have a multitude of races on this planet is it's an indication through environmental activation of the different kinds of genes that represent different extraterrestrial species. We're a melting pot on this planet, not just of human beings, but of extraterrestrial species. And that's why I think we have so many different races on the planet. Because as far as I understand, most ETs, like the Pleiadians, like certain hybrids and whatever, are relatively the same on their planet. They don't have a big mix. They have some, but not as diverse as Earth. And that's another reason, I think, why Earth is so important. Because as we know from a genetic point of view, diversity is what strengthens the stock, so to speak, of humanity. And when you have inbreeding, it weakens it. So the more diverse sources you have of genetic material, the stronger the species gets. It evolves into something that is much, much stronger. So again, with the original question you asked, there are a lot of quote unquote humanoid species, but I think that's because A, we're probably genetically related somehow. B, I think as Bashar has explained it, there are pockets in the galaxy, going back to panspermia, where genetic material was spread in such a way, whether naturally or intentionally, so that there are pockets of certain kinds of genetic material organized in a certain way that then over many planets in an area in a galaxy would probably produce variations that are somewhat similar. So in other words, that's why, you have Pleiadians and hybrids and Arcturus and mantis beings and our whatever. They all still have bipedal locomotion, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, eyes, that kind of thing. Whereas in other pockets of the galaxy, panspermia may have created life forms that are nothing like us at all, that may have 20 tentacles and all this kind of stuff. So there are definitely aliens that are nothing like us, but I think the aliens that are similar to us is the result of either A, intentional spreading of genetic material, seeding by extraterrestrial beings, or from the panspermia point of view, panspermia reached certain pockets of areas in the galaxy that seeded planets with similar DNA just because they could reach it. And therefore, all the planets within, let's say, 20 light years will have received this kind of genetic material from asteroids and comets and what have you. And over there, 50 light years away, they probably received other kinds of genetic constructs and are very, very different from us. So it may be that there are pockets within the galaxy that have similar forms of life, even though they may physically look very different, but in terms of the structure of their genetics. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, totally.
This question, I promise, it's not political, even though it might sound that way at the beginning. So we've heard a lot of psychics talk about Trump's early departure. Does that early departure align with a broader shift in consciousness? Is there something bigger that's going on, or is this, from what you've heard, like an isolated event?
I guess all I will say is it's happening the way it's happening for a reason. It's giving us an opportunity to decide what direction we wish to move in. And therefore, the events that will unfold in the way that they will unfold will be an indication of the choices that we're going to make as a society that will give us the best opportunity to move in the direction that we prefer. That's really all I can say about that.
Makes sense.
The ETs that will be making contact, what is their system of faith? And I guess what's making me think of this is I think humans would be likely to see anyone who's more advanced than them as sort of a god. And I wonder what kind of beliefs they have and what they would impart onto us.
Well, ideally, hopefully, the idea is that we've evolved enough to understand now that after open contact, we are not looking at beings that we would consider to be gods. That's happened in the past, and a lot of what we consider in different religions to be gods probably were ETs. Now we can understand them simply as extraterrestrial beings. So it's not about worshiping them, and it's not about considering them to be gods. Recognizing them as more advanced, fine, they are in many ways. They don't have faith in the way that most people mean that, because when we talk about the idea of having faith, we're sort of saying, well, I want to believe that this is true, but I don't know that this is true. I don't have any concrete evidence that this is true. So they don't have faith as much as their evolutionary path has allowed them to arrive at a point where they know what the structure of existence is. It's not about having faith. It's about, I'm telling you what I see. It'd be like saying, well, you're holding a red rose, and I ask you the question, well, what color is the rose? And you go red. Well, are you saying that because you believe it's red, because you have faith that it's red? And you're going, no, I'm looking at it. It's red. I'm describing what I see. So from their point of view, from the ET's point of view, what they're telling us is what they actually experience as concrete. It's something they observe. It's not something they believe in. It's like, when people ask me, do you believe in UFOs? I say, no. I know they exist because I've seen them twice close up in broad daylight. I don't have to believe that they exist. I know they exist. I've seen them. Just in the same way that you've looked at a helicopter in the sky or an airplane in the sky. Do you have to believe the airplane exists? No, it's there. You're telling me what you see. So it's that kind of level of understanding of how everything exists and how everything works. And what, we call God or goddess, they call all that is. They understand that everything is made from whatever you want to call that, intelligence, existence, it doesn't matter. There is nothing to make anything from other than that, whatever that source is. So that's kind of the way they see it. I think that the increase in pure spirituality on Earth is an indication that we're letting go of the faith-based religions. I think by the year 2050, we probably won't have religion as much as we will have direct spirituality and a direct spiritual understanding of our relationship to source, which I think the ETs will also help bring about by explaining not only how these things work, as Bashar's been explaining for 40 years, but also that they actually can prove to us that spirits exist, that we're spirits, because they communicate with spirits, because they're on that level, they have that vibration, little frequency that allows them to prove that spirits exist, that we are spirits, that we are souls. So I think when they open that door for us, it'll just simply be a matter of, oh, I get it. I'm able now to perceive what we are as spirits, as souls, as non-physical consciousness, And that removes any need to wonder about what we are. It removes any need to have faith about something that I don't really have proof for, because now I have proof. And therefore, bang, I now know it exists. And there's no need for me to have a middleman, so to speak, to tell me what I'm supposed to believe in, because I can see with my own eyes, my own senses, what we actually are all about and what really exists in the universe.
Awesome. Now that we know that you know some people on the inside, those recent drone sightings in Jersey, was that staged to prepare for open contact?
No. My understanding is that those military drones, which were assisted by ET, and maybe some of the drones were ET ships, but not all of them, not many of them. I believe that those drones were actually looking for something to prevent a disaster. Like I think there was some missing nuclear material they were trying to find and stuff like that. So I think that was mostly a military operation, but it was assisted with the help of extraterrestrials.
Can a fifth and higher density being incarnate into a 3D density?
Well, that's what we do all the time. We are fifth density beings. We're not, remember, fifth density is non-physical. That's our spirit level. And here we are incarnating into 3D or 4D physical reality. So that's what happens all the time anyway. That's not a strange thing.
Okay.
So there's so many people out there, like through like us interviewing you and getting to know your Bashar community, there's so many people out there that absolutely love you. I'm just curious, how does that make you feel? And like, do you think about your community every now and then? Like, what does it mean
Well,
to you?
yeah, I do. I'm very appreciative of the fact that there are so many people who support the work,
Mm,
and support, Bashar's information, and maybe even more importantly, who apply it in their lives and improve their lives because of it, which I'm very grateful for. I mean, that's the thing that keeps me going, is that people come back and say, hey, I applied Bashar's formula or his principles in this area of my life, and it made an improvement. Things are better. And since that happens, I know that the material works, not only in my life, but in other people's lives. So it's the material itself that proves its worth. It's not about whether Bashar is real. It's the material itself, when properly applied, actually gives you a result that proves that the material itself is real and actually works no matter where it's coming from. So I'm very grateful for that and very appreciative of that, and all the support that the Bashar community does actually give to us who are working to get the information from Bashar out to the world. So yeah, I'm absolutely
yeah,
appreciative of that.
that's awesome. Yeah, they've been so amazing to work with. And so just big shout out to the Bashar community. It's been so fun to get your questions and do this with you. So thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
This is a super fan question. How far along are you on the next book in the Shards of a Shattered Mirror series? And can you give any inside scoops as to what is going to be in that book?
I'm halfway through the third book.
All right.
There have been a lot of other things that have needed my attention. So the process has actually been very slow. And again, in terms of sort of following my own excitement, not that it's not exciting, but I've actually written an entirely different books since then, after stopping halfway, because I just got inspired to do that, and the whole thing unfolded very quickly. So that book will hopefully be coming out soon. It's called Peculiar Pearl and the Calico Cat, and it involves a girl in the near future on Earth that has an adventure that's very sort of Alice in Wonderlandish in another reality.
Oh,
But I will be able to get back to the third book, which is called Shapeshifter. That should give you a clue as to how far Willa is advancing in her journey. Um, I will get back to that at some point, and hopefully that book will come out in 2026. So I apologize for the delay to all of the fans of the work. I appreciate that you really like the first two books, and I will get back to the third book as soon as I possibly can. One of the things that, of course, prevents me from doing that right now is the creation of the new adventures in our escape room here in Los Angeles. So that takes precedence for me right now. But I will, after that's done, get back to writing several things.
No one can be mad at you because you're following your highest excitement. So you got to follow the formula. Sorry, people.
Yeah, I do. Plus just the synchronicities that direct me to what I
Yeah.
need to focus on at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, you know, the ET contact in 2 years is profound. I'm just curious if there's any other new information that Bashar's, you know, shared with you that kind of blew your mind about anything at all, anything under the sun.
Well, recently he's done something very unusual. Normally on our monthly Zoom events, he gives me, you know, the title for the next month, one at a time. He has recently downloaded all the titles all the way through 2026 and even into 2027,
Oh,
which is unusual, extremely unusual. So to me, it feels like there's definitely an acceleration going on. It's kind of like, here's the path that we're laying out for you. Here's the subjects we're laying out that I'm going to talk about from him over the next literally like year and a half, leading into and up to open contact. So that's very unusual, and to me is an indication of things accelerating, of there being kind of a wrap up to get us to the point we need to be at so that we're really properly prepared for open contact. So that's been the latest very unusual thing.
Wow. Is there any sort of progression that's like you've noticed in those titles?
Yes, I'm not going to give you all the titles right now because I don't have them in front of me and I don't remember them until, you know, I wrote them all down when I got the download. But yes, there's definitely a progression, and some of them go in interesting directions. Yeah.
Ooh. So
just quick follow-up. Will you be publicly releasing those titles or
Not
to
until each
yourself?
not until each monthly event. In other words,
Okay.
we're not going to tell the public ahead of time what all that is,
Okay.
but I have the titles so that I can give them to the people that are putting the events together so that we can advertise 1 month at a time what they are. But I'm just saying he's given me all the titles for the next year and a half.
Pretty cool.
And so there's specific titles for each month. Would that mean that when those end, you might know when contact is going to be? Or
Can only guess.
okay. Well, this has been a pleasure as always. Everybody listening, go get in touch with Darryl's work. Darryl, thank you for being such a good friend of ours. We really love
Oh,
this.
thank you. And thank you for having this outlet for these kinds of discussions. I think these are very important outlets for people to access, you know, discussions and concepts and things like that. So thank you for the work that you're doing in providing this so we can have these chats.
Awesome.
Thank you. We'll see you again, and we're sending love to everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.